Okay, so today we're going to try to do three different halachot about tying and untying knots on Shabbat. Rabbi Reuven Chaim Klein generated this picture with the help of AI, with a play of words on the idea of tying the knot for a wedding and all the different knots that are or aren't allowed on Shabbat. Um, Also, he mentions in his blog that the root Kuf Shin Reish Qosher is mentioned 60 times in the Bible and in the Tanakh, and most of the times that it's mentioned is actually in the context of a coup. So when Atalia, the queen, the evil queen of Jerusalem, finds out that they're going to make Yoash, the 7-year-old son that was being hidden in the Kodesh HaKodashim, in the Holy of Holies, she yelled "Kesher, Kesher," that they're trying to remove me by this secret rebellion or overtaking revolution. And last but not least, there was somebody that very wisely took a different word for time, which is asur, which we say every morning, Matir asurim. Hashem releases those who are in captivity or those who are tied up. So the question was, are you allowed to have a vicious dog in your house? And the answer was mutar asur, which means if he is untied, unleashed, then it's forbidden. But asur, if he is leashed, then mutar, it is permitted. So just wanted to share that because it gives us a little bit of an idea of ties and what their purpose is. And so I think I have to stop the share of the picture in order to start the share of the actual halacha. Right. Okay, so that's where it is. So, let me lift this. The melacha of Qosher refers to binding things together by tying them, while Matir, like we just said, Mutar, refers to separating things by undoing this connection. Unlike Tofer, which refers to joining together soft materials and uniting them, and unlike Boneh, which refers to joining together hard things and uniting them, Qosher refers to connecting things without actually joining and integrating them together as one. As we have seen in chapter 9, Halacha 2, all the melachot that are forbidden on Shabbat have their roots in the melacha that was necessary to erect the Mishkan. This is true also of Qosher Matir as well. It was necessary to tie the threads of the curtains that were cut during the weaving into knots. Additionally, it was necessary to tie knots in order to prepare nets for trapping the snails. And not only trapping the snails, as the next stage in our study will be about trapping deer or other animals that are in the wild, which actually were mentioned in last week's parsha. So these snails provided the tchelet for the dyeing of the threads of the curtains and afterwards for the tzitzit. If a net was missing a strand, it was sometimes necessary to undo the knots from a different net and remove a strand from it. And so this is a much tighter net than would be for a deer, and that's why they specifically talked about snails, because a snail can get out from a hole that is larger because it became untied or something like that. And so the question now is, what kind of knot are we talking about? And so there are four categories, four types of knots. The first one is a strong and durable knot that is not meant to ever be undone. Tying such a knot is prohibited by Torah law. Examples of this type of knot includes the knots of tefillin and the knot of tzitzit. Even with tefillin, sometimes you have to loosen it a little bit in order to make it larger or smaller for a different person, but you never, from the minute that it's tied, the original time at the bar mitzvah, it usually does not ever get untied completely. And also the knots of tzitzit, which is maybe a little bit more temporary. One should be careful to avoid tightening tzitzit knots on Shabbat, because you never want them to be untied, because the untying, first of all, you lose the circles around it and all the other parts. And also, if you tie it in the wrong way, it can get caught in furniture and stuff like that. Category number two, a knot that has an element of permanence, like a knot that one plants plans to leave intact for a week. Rabbi Melamed takes the modern approach of a week is a period of time that is more lengthy, as opposed to a few minutes or a few hours. Tying such a knot is rabbinically prohibited. Similarly, a professional knot tied by a craftsman, even if it is meant to last less than a week, has an element of permanence, and the sages prohibited tying it on Shabbat. So basically, we see here two different identifications or categorization, which is one is the idea of the permanence, and also how professional is this knot or unprofessional. So we'll get to examples later, but if a sailor ties a knot, but it's only for like 4 days until they come back to dock, that is still forbidden on Shabbat. Number 3, a temporary knot, which is meant to last for less than a week and is not a professional knot. One may tie such a knot on Shabbat. That's 100% mutar, not patur v'asur. And knots that are so weak that they are not even categorized as knots. Examples include a single knot and a bow knot, the type used to tie shoelaces. One may use such knots to tie things together, even for an extended period of time. So one of the more stringent, before we go to the actual explanations, one of the more stringent opinions, I saw a picture and I was sure that it was somebody's hair. And so I would say, why is tying this knot in your hair forbidden? It's definitely temporary. Nobody would keep such a tie, but apparently this is referring to a garbage bag, and it just looks to me like hair, but it's a plastic garbage bag. And since the minute you tie it, even if it's only one knot, you're not going to ever untie it. And then according to Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Chabad, the Admor Zaken's Shulchan Aruch, it is forbidden on Shabbat from the Torah. So I guess I never thought about it like that. We have these plastic cords that we just pull them tight, but on Shabbat we don't tie them. So the laws of untying knots are parallel to those of tying them. If tying a certain kind of knot is prohibited by Torah law, untying it is prohibited by Torah law as well. If tying is rabbinical prohibited, then so is untying it. If one may tie it, one may untie it as well. A knot that one may untie in principle, but that in practice is difficult to undo, may be cut. However, one should not do so in front of an ignorant person who may come to permit things that are prohibited otherwise. So now we'll go into the actual meat and bones, as I say. What is going on here? Okay. I'm glad I'm verified, even with the virtual pin. So one may not tie a double knot, even if he plans to untie the knot on the same day. Since this is a strong knot that can remain intact for an extended period, it may be that it is comparable to the knot of a craftsman. That's the Shotei Giborim, the Ashkenazi poskim. According to some Rishonim, Rif and Rambam, tying such a knot for a short term is rabbinically forbidden. All this refers to a tight double knot, which one might use to tie his shoes or to close a garbage bag. But a woman may tie a head scarf this way. Since the scarf is not pulled tight, those who are especially meticulous are stringent and do not use a double knot to tie their headscarf. So that's just, again, it's really based very subjectively on how you are. I personally, this is the last part of it. I personally, when I tie a tie and it works perfectly and it's the right length, the long one and the short one, I just leave it forever. So I try not to do it on Shabbat, but let's see exactly what's going on. So a bow knot is not considered a knot because one pull undoes the whole thing. Even if one bow is tied on top of another, it is not considered a knot because both bows can be undone with one yank, and that's Shulchan Aruch. A single knot is not considered a knot either, since it does not last. So both of these are not only not professional, they're not craftsmen, but they're also temporary as opposed to permanent, so that's why it's allowed. Some maintain that a single knot with a bow on top of it, which is how many people tie their shoes, retains the status of a single knot. but we are more lenient, and we say that since this is not a professional and you are going to take off your shoes, unless you are actually leaving them for a week or more, like let's say that you found the perfect way of putting your shoes on and not having to untie or tie, so that would be forbidden. But so it says here, however, if it is meant to last for a week or more, one may not tie it. It is appropriate to follow this position lechatchila. And last but not least, if one ties and unties his necktie each time he wears it during the week, he may tie it on Shabbat as well. If one ties his necktie and leaves the knot intact for an extended period of time, he may not tie it on Shabbat. In a case of necessity, he may be lenient and tie it on Shabbat as long as he intends to undo the knot on Saturday night. So let's say that you come to an event and you find out that the tie you wore, and this is very practical, I think. If you find that the tie that you wore has a stain on it, and all the rest of your ties in your wardrobe are not tied, then we would allow you to do it as long as you have in mind to take it apart on Motzei Shabbos, because to untie it on Shabbat would be forbidden because it's now a rabbinically prohibited tie. But on the other hand, we also don't want to extend the time, and so that's why we have to do it on Motzei Shabbat. I think this is probably the most practical halacha that we have learned in quite a while, and we'll stop here.